Okay, welcome to episode 72 of the Don't Be Ridiculous podcast. It is Saturday, February 11th. It is about a little after 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Jeremy and Clark Palmer here with you. Wild couple of days in sports, and we haven't even gotten to the Super Bowl yet. We've got NBA trade deadline madness. Even since we talked last week, there's or last Sunday, 6 days ago. There's been all kinds of stuff going on. Major move with Kevin Durant, and and then we got a lot to say NBA wise. And then at the end, we'll wrap it up and talk about Super Bowl, give our picks, and tell you what we think is going on with the game. But major upheaval. I woke up Thursday night. I was asleep, or early Thursday morning, I guess. I was asleep and I woke up about 1:30 in the morning for some reason, and I just kind of looked at my phone just to see what was happening, and holy shit, Kevin Durant traded to Phoenix for Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, and 4 first-round picks. So I was just couldn't believe it.
5:30. And I happened to I was going to start getting ready to, go to work and stuff. And I get my phone out and I'm scrolling through YouTube and I just see Kevin Durant in a Phoenix Suns jersey. I'm like, wait, what? Huh? What? And then I turned on SportsCenter and they had the Scott Van Pelt, and he was talking. I think he was talking to Woj, and he was talking like, what the fuck? I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, it was pretty. I guess I'm not really shocked. I don't know, because Durant tried to get traded, in the offseason and it didn't happen. And then I'm like, oh, okay. Because I kind of thought maybe he would stick it out the rest of the year. Because, the Kyrie Irving trade, I'm like, okay, I think they're a better defensive team now. So.
Yeah, this was a surprise because we didn't think it would get done at the deadline. They had basically and all the reporting was kind of like, I don't think it's going to happen right now just because it's going to be too difficult to get it together by the time the deadline comes around. Once they traded Kyrie Irving, it's like, all right, what are we going to do, as far as that goes? And, but they were able to pull it off. And from reading some of the stuff, the reporting, I guess he basically sat down with them after the Kyrie trade and basically said, I want to get out of here. If you can trade me to Phoenix at the deadline, great. Otherwise, we'll wait until the offseason. And we really didn't, like I said, they did a decent job of keeping it from everybody because we didn't find out until afterwards. And I was blown away by it. And then the initial reaction from people, when I saw what they gave up, and I was like, so they didn't have to trade DeAndre Ayton? So they're keeping Devin Booker? So wait a minute. So they get Durant to add to this team. I started looking at it, and then I was kind of surprised that people were like, oh man, it's a tremendous haul by Brooklyn. Is it? From what I saw, I was like, to get a player, this is Kevin Durant's one of the best 15 players of all time. That's being generous. I'm sorry, that's not being generous. He's one of the 15 best players of all time. He's probably top 12. And this is all you have to give up to get him, and you get him for 3 years?
Yeah. No, you're never going to, when you're trading for a guy like that, you're never going to recoup the same value. It's just impossible. There's just no way. But, look, 4 first-round picks. And you got the players that they got. Those are if you want to move them, you can, because teams need guys like that can play on the wing and play defense and shoot threes. So, I think that's probably the best you're going to end up doing. Unless you want 5 first-round picks or something. But I think this is if Robert Sarver still owned the team, this wouldn't have happened because It looked like the owner, from what Brian Windhorst was saying, was the owner. They literally just closed everything in terms of him owning the team. And then they're like, hey, you want to make this trade? He's like, let's do it. So literally within a couple days of him being officially the owner, he decides, all right, let's do it. Let's go all in. Which, and we'll get into this, but it's I have some criticisms or some reservations about it, but at the same time, you tried to win the championship with what you had, and you couldn't get it done. So at that point, Chris Paul's getting older. Just if you want to go all in, see what happens. So.
Yeah, I think you're right about the value thing, and I think this is as far as getting a deal done because now that we know Kevin Durant basically was like, if you can trade me to Phoenix, go ahead, but that was it. It wasn't like there were other teams involved here. This was the only team he was going to go to. So if you're going to get a deal done, this is probably as good as you're going to do. But I just feel like if I'm Brooklyn, I just feel like I have a hard time doing this. And not getting something that I know is real back. Like a bunch of the guys they traded for are probably, they already moved Crowder to Milwaukee. I don't know that either one of these guys is going to be on the team, next season. So I just felt like, I understand Brooklyn's got to make the best of a bad situation, but, so let's assess this. Obviously this is a gigantic failure. This is one of the worst failures in sports by Brooklyn, this whole thing with Kyrie and Kevin Durant going there. And then it went for a limited amount of time. They had James Harden too. So it's amazing to me that like we all thought this wouldn't work. I thought it wouldn't work initially just because of the roster around Durant and Kyrie. And then once they got James Harden, I was kind of like, all right, well, if they're going to get all three of those guys, then all right, maybe this will work. And on the floor, when they were on the floor together, it did. Like they were this basketball wise, this was a win. These guys were really good. There was just too much instability personality wise and with the organization, and the combination of the two, they just couldn't keep it together.
Yeah, let me just okay. So yeah, I was thinking about this the Thursday or yesterday. There are some circumstances that happen in terms of injuries, and obviously stuff with Kyrie that caused this not to work. Because if not for the injuries, maybe they would have won the championship that year. They were playing Milwaukee in the second round of the playoffs. But those things did happen. But you can't just throw together stars and expect it to work. There's a reason why often it doesn't. We've seen many times over the last, couple decades where they try to do that, and oftentimes it worked in Boston. They won one championship and they came close to winning another one. It worked with Miami, but people need to understand something. Like, okay, first of all, LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh took a little bit less money because they wanted to get Udonis Haslem, okay? And also, they were committed on defense, okay? LeBron and D. Wade and Bosh, they were committed on defense, and they, granted, they lost the first year. It was easy because they got to the finals. They won every series in 5 games. It was easy the first year, but then they got embarrassed in the finals. So LeBron had to work on his post-up game. Bosh had to learn how to shoot threes and realize you're going to have to play center more and you're going to have to really sacrifice stats. And Dwayne Wade was like, okay, I got to let LeBron have the team, And then they kind of broke through and they made the finals 4 years in a row. They won 2 championships. But there was, the team kept getting better, right? And the organization reshaped the roster in the second and third year to make them better, and they were able to win championships those years. But the guys involved were committed to winning. They made sacrifices. They made changes. They grew as a team, and they won. Okay, Boston won because Kevin Garnett is, he was really committed on defense. He's really intense, and he kept them that. Plus, they had Tom Thibodeau as an assistant coach. They kept them committed. Paul Pierce was hitting big shots, and then obviously Ray Allen did his thing, and they were able to win 1. They probably should have won 2 that second, time in the finals. But again, you can't just throw stars together. There's a lot of things that have to come together and work to be able to win, and to be able to be consistently good. And, there's that piece of it. But then, of course, there's the whole Kyrie thing. And then there's the, Kevin Durant has culpability too, but so does the organization for firing what's the isn't he now
Kenny
the coach of the
Atkinson.
Celtics? Or no, it's not. It's a different guy. Who the coach of the Nets? It was Kenny Atkinson or something.
Right.
Yeah. So he was there, and then Kyrie Irving was like, "No, we got to get rid of him, and we'll hire Steve Nash, who was, no offense to Steve Nash, one of the greatest point guards we've ever seen, but he was totally beyond his skis. He had no idea what the hell he was doing, you know." And then, of course, the Kyrie thing, not getting the vaccine, and then going on his sabbatical, and then this year you had the posting the anti-Semitic movie. So yeah, it was just a wide variety of factors. If you want me to blame one person, I'll blame Kyrie, but there's culpability all around.
Yeah, I mean, I looking back now, I mean, I would just say that when Brooklyn had opportunities to pivot off this and try to do things to fix it, and I just feel like they let the vaccine thing go on way beyond its usefulness. If once the decision was made that Kyrie wasn't going to get the vaccine and therefore couldn't play, and by the way, this wasn't an NBA decision. This only affected if you played for the Brooklyn Nets, the New York Knicks, or the Golden State Warriors. He could have played for any other team,
right?
You know, every game. So he couldn't play in those places. So if they'd have pivoted off this at the time and just gotten what they could for Kyrie and kept that way, Harden wouldn't have checked out, right? They could have kept Harden and Durant together, then they could have made it work. But I just feel like at that point they were too far in, and the idea that they were just going to let this go and just let Kyrie not play in any games, and then he'll only play in the road games, was a ridiculously untenable, and they never should have let it go on as long as it did. And so everybody deserves blame here. The players probably the most blame, but I think that Brooklyn could have handled it.
And the other thing is that I didn't mention, just, is in terms of leadership. Where was the leadership on the team? It wasn't coming from Steve Nash. It certainly wasn't coming from Kevin Durant. That's where some of the culpability is with Durant. It's like, I understand, like, you just want to play, but I mean, at a certain point, like, you need leaders on the team, and you didn't have them. So, and Durant's not going to do it. Kyrie's going to, I guess, sort of do it, but he's terrible. Harden's not really going to do it. So, you didn't have any of that. So it's just, it's just this thing where you're like, well, I guess it can work if they have this much talent. But, again, culpability all around. It's just kind of, it's just kind of,
So now Brooklyn's got this weird team with all these wings, and the thing is, they're going to make the playoffs because there's only like 25 games left. So they're going to make the playoffs with this team with a bunch of spare parts on it. Seth Curry and Joe Harris, and they got Bridges and Johnson. And Ben Simmons. It's just such a strange group of people. But let's pivot back to Phoenix. So I think, this is how I look at it with Phoenix. Look, they're instantly title contenders. I'm not going to jump in and are they the favorites? I have no idea. I mean, Durant's still injured. We got to see what this looks like when they actually play together. So I'm not going to jump in and, I don't really think we need to make decisions on assessing what this team is yet when we have no idea what it is yet. I also think that, Phoenix needs to, they need to look at the buyout market and try to get, a few more guys to help them, because they're, now that those two guys are gone, that really hurts them defensively. They're not going to have they don't have the depth that they are probably going to need at some point. But in a playoff series, if you got those four guys, you're a nightmare to play. And so I think this, if anything less than the conference finals for Phoenix is a gigantic disappointment. I think they're going to be really tough to beat. And look, from the perspective of the trade, all right, if it doesn't work out, well, okay. In 2 to 3 years, they'll still have Ayton and Booker. Both those guys are going to have trade value, to varying degrees. So I think this is a perfectly acceptable risk for Phoenix to take, because if they don't win the title, all right, they're going to be in a situation where they can do something about it. And it sounds like this owner wants to spend money because they took on more money in terms of, the luxury tax with this trade. So I think Phoenix is instantly contenders, and I would have done this move. I think you do this move 100 times out of 100.
Yeah, that's yeah. I want to be clear. Like, you definitely make this move and you try to work it out later. Obviously there's concern now because you sacrifice your depth, and I don't want to overreact and say depth is the most important thing in the playoffs, but it does kind of matter to an extent. I mean, I guess you can kind of stagger people's minutes to make sure you have a couple of your best players out there all the time, and that can kind of work. But, the other problem, especially not having a lot of depth with this team, is that Chris Paul is at the end of his career. He gets hurt every year, and he has trouble making it through the playoffs. Just anytime he goes to the playoffs, he has trouble making it through. Okay. Durant obviously gets hurt every single year now. So we'll see if he can. He hasn't had an extended playoff run in a few years now. So we'll see. And the last time he did with the Warriors, he got hurt in the second round. So obviously that's a huge risk, especially when you don't have depth, because a bad injury at the wrong time and you're done. Especially with this roster. Defensively, yeah, that's going to suck. This is where Durant and Ayton and Booker really need to. They're going to have to really be committed on defense to make up for their shortcomings in terms of the rest of the roster. So, can they do that? I think they have the ability to do it. We'll see. I'm not picking them to win the championship this year. I'm not saying they shouldn't have made the move, but I'm not picking them to win the championship this year because we were talking about this yesterday. I mean, how many times do teams make a trade like this and they win the championship right away? Now, we really haven't seen a trade like this where they're trading a guy who's like top 12 all time. Like, Pau Gasol got traded to the Lakers midseason. They made it to the finals. They lost in 6 games.
Okay. So let me jump in there. So I was going to talk about this. So I made some notes on this. Trades, NBA midseason trades that have led to a title, NBA offseason trades that have been led to a title. So a player of this caliber doesn't get traded that often, ever. I was just looking at the list of, great players who've been traded. It's pretty small. I mean, it goes way back. It's Will Chamberlain traded to the Lakers, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar traded to the Lakers, Oscar Robertson traded from Cincinnati to Milwaukee in 1970. Then obviously the Shaquille O'Neal traded to the Miami Heat. So it's only happened a handful of times in the history of the league that a player that's this good has been traded, to another team, which is, you would think would be, it's kind of interesting. You would think it'd be a mark on their legacy, but I don't know that I don't know that it really is. But this is the first time Kevin Durant's been traded, even though he's been on a few different teams.
Right. And some of those trades were in the off season. So you have a whole season to work things out. Like you were saying before, there's only 25 games left. Durant still has to come back from an injury. So Booker was dealing with a hamstring. I guess Chris Paul's still, I guess he's playing now. But, so it's like they got to figure this out in a hurry. So that's another concern.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to do. But the only thing, what I think Phoenix has in its favor is they have finals experience. This isn't a team that was just put together. They're adding Durant to it, but they have the core of the team that, the team that they have is already there. They already have an established culture. So those things, are in their favor. But yeah, as far as midseason trades, there were only 3 that I could find there's actually 4 where the team actually won the championship. Well, there's 3 that are like, okay, legitimate. They needed that guy to win the title. Well, we'll see. Let's go through the list here. So going all the way back to 1987, the Lakers actually made a trade in February of 1987 to get Michael Thompson to back up Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Now, you could say the Lakers would have won the title anyway. Maybe. I mean, they lost in the playoffs in 86 to the Houston Rockets, so they needed a big guy because the team with Houston, if you were, at the time had Hakeem Olajuwon and Ralph Sampson, and Kareem was getting old at this point, and they basically got their ass kicked. So, they did, they probably would have had the league's best record anyway, but it did help them. It did win him the title, and he's also Klay Thompson's dad. So, And then the next one was in 1989. Mark Aguirre was traded to from Dallas to the Pistons for Adrian Dantley. And the Pistons had made the finals the year before, so this wasn't a game changer where they couldn't get over the hump. They took the Lakers to 7 games the year before, but they did win the title after that. 1995, the Houston Rockets traded for Clyde Drexler. They're the only 6th seed to win the championship. So that's still one of those outliers, which, I don't know if we could be looking at a scenario like that in the Western Conference this year. But they ended up winning the title, although they had won the title the year before. So, and then the biggest one that I think really kind of put them over the hump was 2004. The Pistons traded for Rasheed Wallace. They had been a perennial playoff team, and he was kind of like the final thing that they needed, and they ended up winning the title. I mean, the rest of those are all, teams that had teams. 2 of them were teams that had already won championships. In the case of the Clyde Drexler and Michael Thompson one. And then, Mark Aguirre, the team Pistons had been to the finals already. So, the midseason trades really help. But yeah, it is rare for, a team that, it has to be a good team, obviously. And the Suns have that profile, right? They were in the finals in 2020, and now they're adding Durant to their team. So they do fit the profile of one of these other teams that we're talking about. And then, there's some other ones. I wrote down, you talked about the Pau Gasol one. There's some midseason ones where the team got to the finals. Another one that I found like that was, in 2001, the 76ers traded for Dikembe Mutombo,
right,
who at the time was the defensive player of the year. And, they made it to the finals. They got killed in the finals, but they made it. So there's a handful of them. There's a handful of where teams made a trade at the deadline and it really pushed them forward, either won the title.
Wait a minute. Kawhi Leonard. I didn't even think of that. Was that the offseason or was that the...
That was the offseason.
That was the offseason. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but so, it does count. There's plenty of them that were in the offseason, like the one you just brought up. So, yeah, it's happened in the offseason. There's been a few more of them. But, yeah, it's not, it's a handful of times. The NBA's been around for 75 years. So,
yeah. So, again, I think you make the trade. I'm not saying they shouldn't have made the trade. I think there's some concerns. In terms of, like I said, I'm not going to pick them to win this year. I just think there's too many things working against them. But I could see them maybe winning the championship next year, And right. Maybe I'm wrong this year. I'm just, I have some concerns. But again, I would have made the trade. And I will say, I think some people are kind of saying, well, they don't win the championship, this is a failure. Well, if they win the championship next year, it's a success, right? If they don't win the championship this year, I don't think it's a failure yet. I don't think you can say that. So, we'll see like you were talking about yesterday, if they can get more players in the buyout market, maybe they can, fill out the roster a little better and, maybe they can kind of figure everything out. But
yeah, they have the right kind of team to do it. And the way the Western Conference is this year, I think this is the year to swing for it. There's no, the Warriors are trying to figure stuff out and there's no really great team in the West right now. And so I think they have as good a chance as any. Why not roll the dice with one of the best players in the history of the game?
Yep.
So before we talk about the other trades, I know LeBron finally broke the scoring record the other night, even though in a losing effort to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I know you had a lot of thoughts about this, LeBron being a great scorer and all of that debate that happened after he broke the record.
So, okay. So let's be clear about this. LeBron is now the all-time leading scorer in NBA history. And he's probably going to be that for quite a while because you consider the way he looks, like the way he's playing, he can probably play a few more years. So he can add on a few thousand to what the record was that Kareem had when he retired. So, he's probably going to hold on. Kareem held it for like 38 years. So, that's a long time. Anyway, so obviously there was reaction to that this week. after he broke it, and how big of a deal is this? How significant is this record? What does this mean? Of course, when you're talking about LeBron, you have to keep bringing up Jordan. You can't talk about LeBron without talking about Michael Jordan, because why would we want to just talk about LeBron and say how great LeBron is? No, we got to compare him to Jordan. So no, what was really ridiculous to me was, like on First Take, well, is LeBron a great scorer? And people were saying, no, he's not a great scorer. I don't think of him that way. Okay, look. I don't care how you think of him. When the dude breaks the scoring record in the NBA, he's a great scorer. Now, if you prefer other players to him as a scorer, if you prefer other players over LeBron, that's fine. You like Kobe better, you like Jordan better, you like Kareem better, whatever, Wilt Chamberlain, whatever, that's fine, But you can't say LeBron's not a great scorer when he broke that record, okay? You don't break that record unless you are a great scorer. There's no two ways about it. Okay, that would be like saying Emmitt Smith is not a great running back. Okay, Emmitt Smith holds the NFL career rushing record. Okay, he passed Walter Payton like almost 20 years ago now. And he went like 2,000 yards past that or something. So he holds the record. He's probably going to hold the record for quite a long time. I can't imagine someone breaking it given the way the NFL is now. But, if you prefer other running backs to Emmitt Smith, like you think Barry Sanders is better than him, or O.J. Simpson, or, I'm trying to think of who else, or you like Jim Brown, or whoever else, that's fine. But Emmitt Smith was a great running back, okay? Period. That's not a subjective statement. It's an objective statement. He was a great running back. LeBron's a great scorer. And the numbers back it up. Not just breaking this record, but his consistency of scoring points since he got into the league. Okay? So, and I know this always gets wrapped up into who's the greatest player of all time. You know what? I think it's dumb to have that discussion, but fine. I'll stake out a position. LeBron is the greatest player of all time. Okay? And we're going to sit here and we're going to try to chip away at LeBron at every single thing that he does and not give him credit. Look, the dude's playing in year 20 and he's averaging, I forget what it is, how many points per game, but it's ridiculous. Guys who are 20 years in don't average that many points, and the consistency, and also he's top 4 in assists. Think about that. He's the all-time leading scorer and he's top 4 in assists. The dude is unbelievable, okay? You can give him credit and still think that Jordan's better than him. I'll disagree with you, but fine. You can like Jordan better, okay? You can like Jordan better, but you can't like Kobe, okay. You can like Kobe better, but you can't tell me that Kobe's a better player than LeBron is, okay? Matter of fact, Tim Duncan's better than Kobe, okay? Tim Duncan's a better player than Kobe. So if Tim Duncan played on the Lakers, that's what we would say. Okay. I'm trying to think if there's any other points I was going to make about this, but it was just, I'm just listening to this stuff and it's just infuriating. The dude is unbelievable. And the other point I wanted to make. Okay. There are sports records that obviously hold more cultural significance. The home run record, like the record that Hank Aaron had, the record that Babe Ruth had before Hank Aaron broke it, 61 homers in a season, 400 batting average, the record for RBIs, number
56 game hitting streak.
Yeah, the hitting streak, like that's fine. There are records like that have more cultural significance, but that doesn't mean that this isn't a tremendous accomplishment by LeBron. Okay, that this is a tremendous. Now, even though it doesn't hold that same cultural significance, scoring in the NBA, like that's the whole thing. Okay, and LeBron has done it more than anyone else in the history of the game. Okay, that is a huge deal, and I'm not going to let whether it's Stephen A. Smith or Rick Bucher or Chris Russo or anybody else try to downplay this and act like this isn't a big deal. It is a big fucking deal, okay? Maybe they didn't cover it as much as some of these other records, and that could speak to the way the media is now. I don't know. But this is a very significant achievement. congratulations, and we can celebrate the guy without finding some way. Like someone else was saying, oh, well, I just wish it was in a bigger game. Who fucking cares? Like literally, oh, I wish this was in a playoff game or something. Well, first of all, they don't count the points in the playoff game toward that record. Second of all, like, I just, so, like, literally, you're just trying to find something not to like. Okay? So I think that's pretty much covers my thoughts on the issue.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. Look, I think it's a tribute to LeBron. He's the all-time leading scorer, and that's not even his best quality. It's not even. This is how good LeBron is. That's not even the best thing he does, and he does it better than anybody else. You know, it's just it's amazing.
And you know what? I just thought of this. Okay, I was like, you know what? I want to see some more bad takes on this issue. Let me go on YouTube and look up Jason Whitlock. So I did, and he says this record is not impressive at all. With the most impressive record in the NBA history is scoring 100 points in one game. Okay, now. First of all, that is a very impressive record. It's never going to happen again. Okay, because if you think of the circumstances under which Wilt Chamberlain was playing, he was so much bigger and more skilled than everybody else, and the way the game was played, I mean, come on, you know. Now, I don't want to take credit away from him for scoring 100 points in a game. That's unbelievable. Hello. But so's what LeBron did.
Well, we got sideways on this. First of all, there was like, oh, this record's unbreakable. This isn't the unbreakable record, folks. Go look at Wilt Chamberlain's records. Those are all the unbreakable ones. It's simple. He averaged 50 points a game for an entire season. He played every minute of every game for an entire season. The records by Wilt Chamberlain won't be touched. Okay? Because scoring's up. Look, Luka Doncic in 10 years is going to be, you know, at 20,000 points. Like he's, you know, if he plays long enough, they could get within striking distance of whatever this record is. So the unbreakable record, and it's incredibly impressive. It stood for 38 years for a reason.
Yeah.
Okay. We had some technical difficulties there, but we're back. So the next thing that Clark wanted to talk about was Kyrie Irving had talking to the media after his first, before and after his first Dallas Mavericks game, and he had a lot of quotes, a lot of things that we could repeat.
He felt disrespected by the Nets organization.
Yep, he felt disrespected by the Nets organization that he consistently dragged through the mud and refused to play for at certain points. You know, just decided to take 2 weeks off, just needed a sabbatical. The owner's texting him about what's going on, and he's not answering him at all. So, you know, and the other part that I loved was like, I've been a selfless leader. That's my favorite. My favorite. I've been a selfless leader. I don't know what you're talking about. Meanwhile, the entire thing has been about him. It's about been his contract, his vaccination status, his idea about what I'm a voice for the voiceless, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. It's just one of those things you just like, you hear him and you're just like, dude, do you hear yourself? Obviously he doesn't. He has no self-awareness at all. Just literally it's like, dude, do you hear yourself? Do you hear what you're saying? Do you hear how ridiculous you sound? You know, now again, I on some level I can understand him saying he felt disrespected because he wanted a contract, and they tried to put some clause in the contract like we're not going to give you the third year unless you win the championship, which on some level I get that, but it's like, dude, what choice did you give them? Like you kept getting injured, then you stopped playing. There was the whole vaccination thing. You know, you're saying we don't need a coach. Like you're sort of undermining the whole team. It's like, what choice do they have?
Yeah, and it's, you understand, and then you watch the first game he plays against Dallas, or for Dallas against the Clippers, and they win with Luka out, and it's like, this is why people fall for his bullshit all the time. This is why, because of what he can do on the court. And, you know, their people are seduced by it. They can't help themselves. And every team is like, oh, we'll make it work. yeah, it'll be fine here, and he's going to continue. As long as he's this talented, he's going to continue to get second chances. Now, I would argue his talent is diminished. He doesn't have the same impact that he had 6 or 7 years ago, but it doesn't matter. When the guy puts up 30, he's going to kind of get his way. And this is the thing, like, as this week has gone on, I've hated the Kyrie Irving trade more and more as we go, because they're going to give him a contract extension. They just are. You don't make that move unless that's what you're going to do. So they're going to give him an extension. And by the way, like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, like Kevin Durant's got 3 more years in his deal. I think there's zero chance he stays in Phoenix the whole time. I don't think there's any way he doesn't get unhappy at some point and just decide he doesn't like this anymore.
Yeah. Which, as Miami Heat fans, like, yeah, that'd be kind of cool that, because I think that was in the offseason, that was a team that was obviously trying to get him. And I think he sort of said he might want to go there. I mean, he wanted to go to Phoenix first. But, that might be kind of cool if they could get it. But again, he's, as he gets older and he keeps getting hurt, like it is kind of a risky proposition. But, he's still Kevin Durant. He's still really good. But there is kind of I'm more concerned about that with Kyrie Irving, because if Phoenix they're out there playing basketball and they're winning games, then even if they, like, say they win one title, or even if they don't win a title, like they make the Western Conference Finals or they make the finals or something, like, I think Durant will be okay unless they have some sort of Draymond Green type situation, which I don't imagine that happening, because, Phoenix doesn't really, I mean, unless him and Chris Paul get into it, but I don't know. I kind of don't think that's going to happen. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I just think, like Golden State, they won, and everyone, and he's, too sensitive to criticism, and everybody came out and criticized him for joining the Warriors, and he just, he just wasn't as happy there the next year, and it was just basically like, I'm out of here when my contract's up. So maybe I'll wait till his contract's up. Maybe that'll be the difference. But yeah, it's well, since we're on this already, I'm going to go ahead and do my rant now on the. This is one of the things that I've been steadfast on this podcast is the James Harden Ben Simmons trade, where
it gets worse every day. It literally looks worse every single day. It's just like,
Exactly. It continues to get worse. And one of the biggest problems is, and I've heard, and I think Nick Friedel and a few other people brought this up, is that the Ben Simmons contract kept getting in the way of everything that they wanted to do.
Yep.
So it's a problem. Like, look, I said this from the beginning. I said this, as Skip Bayless would say, I first guessed this. I said when this trade was done, this is a really bad idea for both teams. Everyone involved is going to regret this deal. Ben Simmons continues to get worse. He's averaging like 6 points a game. Like, the guy doesn't even – it's like he's not – and I read an article today that part of, Ben Simmons' lack of, trying to get better is part of the reason why Durant wanted to leave. So you had this James Harden deal that could have gotten you some stuff, and you traded it for this guy who's not going to give you anything. And you got to pay him $40 million a year for the next 2 years. Like, it's such a disaster. Like that, I think it just gets overlooked. And James Harden, like, look, I'm glad that, at least Philly was able to turn Ben Simmons into James Harden, who's a productive player. But what's going to happen in the playoffs. James Harden's going to no-show a playoff game because that's what he did last year against the Miami Heat. Just decided, I'm not going to shoot. So it's going to happen. Philadelphia's going to get in. He's going to no-show in a playoff game, and we're going to be, it's going to be a disaster. And then Philadelphia at the end of the season has got to decide whether they're going to re-sign him again. Are you kidding me? Like, it's absolute. It's just. This trade it's one of the worst trades I've ever seen. Both teams lost. Both teams acted like they won. That's the craziest part about it. They were both thrilled with this trade, and Daryl Morey's like, look at that. I got James Harden for Ben Simmons. It's like, yeah, way to go, dumbass. Like, hey, you didn't, like, it's great. You got James Harden who's not going to show up in the biggest games. Like, when you're a team that's trying to win the title, James Harden's not helping you.
Well, the other thing is,
reason.
Yeah, it was clear. I mean, I just think it's so funny because it was clear from the very beginning this was a bad idea. And there were so many people in the media going, "Oh, this is great, blah blah blah," and it's just like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you not? How are you not seeing how this is such a bad idea?
Yeah, Ben Simmons was cooked in Philadelphia. He was done. That was it. Now, listen, maybe this is a better situation for him. There's no pressure now. There's nobody on this team. They're not any good. They've got a bunch of role players. Maybe this is the situation he needs to play better, but I just think at this point he's kind of a lost cause because his contract is just ridiculously prohibitive, which is why it made me laugh when Colin Cowherd's like, Westbrook's got the worst contract ever. And I'm like, really? like Westbrook plays hard every night. He does some of the wrong stuff, but it's not because he doesn't care.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, Ben Simmons making almost as much money as Westbrook and
he just doesn't
not
care.
really interested. So anyway, with that, let's springboard into the Lakers trade. So this is surprisingly, I know everything with the Lakers, they're like the Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys in football. Everything is controversial with them. Everything's a story. So they make the deal. They finally get off of Russell Westbrook. They trade Russell Westbrook to Utah in like some kind of 3 or 4 team deal. They get D'Angelo Russell. They get Malik Beasley. They get Jared Vanderbilt. If you remember, Beasley and Vanderbilt were in the Gobert trade from Minnesota to Utah. So they give up, I think, a first-round protected pick in 2029. So not even and a pick that the other team is never going to, probably not going to be able to use anyway. So they basically they don't really give up a lot. They get some legit basketball players, which is nice. But the reaction to this trade is kind of been like I find it everyone's all over the place with how this stuff goes with the Lakers. Colin Cowherd thinks this trade's great. How did they pull this off? It's amazing. Blah blah blah. And it's like, well, okay, but I'd like to point out that Russell Westbrook's an expiring contract. Those are pretty valuable in the NBA, especially when you're a big expiring contract like Westbrook. Number 2, Minnesota's been trying to get rid of D'Angelo Russell for a year. Like, okay, Utah's tanking, so they have no problem getting off of those guys for some cap flexibility. So this isn't amazing that they made this trade. This isn't like, oh my God, it's a steal. I mean, they got...
Yeah, and it's not like this trade turns them into a contender now.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. But I just think, I think my criticism of the Lakers is trades were sitting there for a year. You knew that this was not working out with Russell Westbrook before last year's trade deadline. You knew that. Okay? We knew in the summer they could have gotten that Buddy Hield and Miles Turner from the Pacers. That deal was sitting there. We knew they could have gotten that. So it's like, my criticism is, why did you wait so long to pull the trigger on this? You knew it didn't work, and yet you kept after it. Well, we'll get Darvin Ham, and Westbrook will come off the bench, and, whatever. And listen, a lot of it is the Lakers roster is pretty bad. That's the bigger issue. That's really the reason. It's not Russell Westbrook's fault that the roster's bad. So that has nothing to do with winning and losing games. But just as a roster construction move, that's the part I just didn't get. Like, you guys, this was sitting there. Like, you get to the point where there's 25 games left in the season. You're going to have to really push yourselves to make sure you get into the play-in, let alone into the top 8. And you let this sit there this long. It's like, that just blows my mind.
Yeah. I mean, like we were talking about, with the Suns, like they've got like 25 games to figure it out. So now the Lakers, okay, now you've changed your route. Only got 25 games to figure it out, and you're not even in the playoffs right now. You're like 12th in the West or something. So yeah, it's just, I mean, you got to move off stuff quick. I mean, if you have the opportunity to move off something quicker than this, you got to do it, because now you just wasted 55 games or whatever. So, yeah, I don't, obviously, look, we've talked about this before. The Lakers are just, they're a joke of a franchise in terms of the way that they're run and the way that they're I mean, like, first of all, Rob Pelinka is not a GM. He was Kobe's agent. What are you doing hiring him as the GM? Hire a real fucking GM. then there was the whole Magic Johnson thing. It's like, what are you doing? Hire real people who know what they're doing, who can make the right moves and try to make you guys a good team. Don't just do everything because, oh, well, I know this person, So again, it just goes to show that, I understand they won a championship in the bubble, but they don't really deserve any credit for that. I mean, literally, LeBron went there because he wanted to live in Southern California. Okay? So that doesn't mean that they're all of a sudden going to be good again. And then once LeBron, and by the way, LeBron can't even get them into playoff contention himself because he's too old now. So it's like, I don't know when they're going to be a championship contender again because the way they're running their franchise is just totally ridiculous. And this is just, the latest example of this, waiting too long to make this trade, holding on to some of these draft picks when it's like, you're the Lakers. Just go get players you need to be, an actual playoff team.
Yeah, and look, the trade on its face, and, we got to give the Lakers credit. Look, that was a great moment the other night, LeBron breaking the record. It's a shame they lost the game. But I've watched the Lakers play a handful of times this year, and it's just they look disinterested. Anthony Davis, I don't know what was going on in that Oklahoma City game. It looked like he really didn't want to be there. And, the rest of the roster just, I don't even know who these people are. Like they're running, just barely above a G League team as far as the rest of the roster. So it's pretty rough, but this trade on its face, this is good. This is a good move. They have a professional basketball team now. They have a legitimate NBA team now. Finally. It's like you finally got some shooting. Wow. Amazingly enough, they put some shooting around LeBron at some point. It's amazing how that works. Beasley's a good shooter. Russell's a good shooter. So listen, for the rest of this season, could they be better? Yes. They have a shot at making the playoffs. Absolutely. But the variance between where people are with this, and these are supposed to be the people that we listen to about, knowing the NBA. So Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo are just, the Lakers are not even, are not even worth talking about. Right. And then Colin Cowherd thinks that the Lakers are the fifth best team in the West, which, I don't know what planet you're on if you think that. That's just delusional.
Hang on a minute. In order for them to get to being he said he wasn't talking about playoff seeding. Okay, fine. But even in order for them to get into the playoffs, at not being the 7th or 8th seed, get out of the play. What is the play-in tournament? Is 7 through 10?
Yep.
Okay. In order to, because you don't want to be in the play-in tournament. If you're in the play-in tournament, you're probably going to lose in the first round of the playoffs. You want to be 1 through 6. So what would they have to do in order to get the 6th seed if there's only 25 games left?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty difficult, especially when the teams in front of them
18 and 7.
Especially when the teams in front of them got better, right? Phoenix got better, Dallas got better. These teams are making moves to try to get better. Golden State is right in front of where the Lakers are. So yeah, it's going to be. Listen, they have a shot. The Lakers at least have a chance. They have a fighting chance now to get in the playoffs because they actually have some real NBA players instead of whatever they were putting out there before, and they don't have Westbrook, doing what Westbrook does. So they might be, they're gonna be better the rest of the year. But this idea that they have the people are presenting this they might have a shot, they might have a shot as a contender. It's like, I don't know what you obviously haven't. If you think that, you haven't watched the Lakers this year, number one. And number two, when's Anthony Davis going to get injured again? He's not going to make it through the next 25 games without getting hurt. That I can guarantee. You can forget that. So you're going to get into the playoffs with this team. We'll see where they're at. Because LeBron's playing great. This is not a LeBron criticism, but this is LeBron trying to take this team that doesn't really fit and trying to drag them, against these teams in the West that are really good. Even the teams that aren't in the top 4 are really good. So, yeah. And the other thing is I was reading before I got on here, I was reading Kevin O'Connor did power rankings, NBA power rankings after the trade deadline. He had the Lakers 6th, not in the West, in the entire NBA. He had Denver and he had Denver behind them. He had Memphis behind them. I don't understand. How are we falling for this?
Yeah,
we tried that. By the way, we tried this bullshit last year with Brooklyn, where everybody's like, "Oh, I don't know, man. Just wait, they get in. You know, they could be trouble." And Boston swept them.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why we're falling for this trap. I've watched the Lakers play. This isn't even close to a championship team. Anybody who thinks they're going to get into the playoffs and be competitive against Denver or the Clippers or Memphis is delusional. Like, they're going to get killed. So
Yeah.
I understand why we have to talk about it, but come on, man. Like, it's a nice trade. That's great. Maybe in the offseason. And the nice part about it is if they're smart and they don't re-sign D'Angelo Russell, they might have some cap space in the offseason. So they might be able to – people still want to play for the Lakers. So –
Right. Well, you know, you would hope they don't sign D'Angelo Russell, but, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like, you know, I don't think, you know, I like I said, for the rest of the season, sure, it's fine. You know, LeBron will have some shooters. He'll get them open shots. You know, this isn't a bad deal. But the Lakers have ruined. Basically, they threw away this season because they were too scared to make a move before this, and it makes absolutely no sense to me. That they did this nonsense. They should have bought out Russell Westbrook before the season and just moved on, you know, or traded him earlier. So anyway, some other NBA trades that I wanted to just bring up that I thought were kind of interesting. I mean, I don't know what Jay Crowder's deal is. You know, he hasn't played this year. He just basically has kind of held out because he hasn't gotten the contract he wanted. If he's available and can play, I think it really helps Milwaukee. You think about Milwaukee's got, you know, the addition of Joe Ingles. Chris Middleton was out for the first 39 games, but now he's actually playing. So they'll get a nice stretch run here with all of those guys. I think Milwaukee did the best they could to position themselves to be ready if they have to play Boston again.
Yeah.
So I really like where they're at with that. Giannis is doing what he usually does, playing like an MVP. I'm not a huge believer in the Clippers, but I thought what the Clippers did was really nice. They got a backup big. They got Plumlee. They got Bones Highland from Denver, who can score. They got Eric Gordon from Houston, good shooter. So I feel like the Clippers have just got, you know, they're rolling out lineups, and it's just, if Kawhi and Paul George are right, they're a matchup problem. They're just a team that it's going to be really difficult to match up with them. You know, they've got everything that you want. They got length, they got size, they got scoring. So they got defenders. So that really, I was impressed with what they did. They didn't make a huge move, but I was impressed with it. You know, the Warriors, like this Gary Payton trade, it doesn't look like it, you know, we'll see what happens with it. It looks like he didn't pass the physical as far as Golden State was concerned. He had been playing for Portland. He was injured for the first 35 games or something, but he had been playing and they had cleared him to play. So I'm a little confused as to what's going on there. So
yeah, I read something that he was playing through pain. He was getting Toradol shots to play. And so I guess as of right now, I don't know. I think it's still up in the air so whether or not it's going to go through, and that's a big problem because they need more defenders. And Gary Payton Jr. last year was really good for them on defense. He helped them. Like when he was on the floor, they were a really good team. So,
yeah, I think I agree with you. I think Golden State's going to have a problem in the playoffs if Wiggins and Draymond Green can't guard everybody. You know, they really only have the two guys, and Kuminga is good on defense, but they can't play him the whole game, and I don't think he's going to be playing crunch time. So it's you know, and plus if this trade doesn't go through, like it looked like all right, they gave up on James Wiseman, and now they may have to hang on to him if this trade doesn't go through. So it's going to be it's an interesting situation. But yeah, I you know, you and I are in agreement on this. I don't I'm not just sitting there going, the Warriors will figure it out. I'm not just going to assume that. I'm not saying forget it, the Warriors are done. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I don't have a lot of confidence that.
Well, and if Steph Curry's going to be out like 2, 3, 4 weeks, then I mean, I'm trying to. That's most of the rest of the season. So how many games is he going to have out? Is he going to be out there before the playoffs start? And then it's like, well, are you trying to play yourself into basketball shape in the playoffs? Like, that's not good.
Yeah, I mean, if he was out a month, right? If he was out until March, that's like 13 to 15 games somewhere in there, and then he'd have about 15 games left. But and the problem is, the only problem with that is this is not Golden State can't have that right now. They're in 8th right now in the West. They're barely over 500. So they need they don't have time for this. Like, they don't have time to wait. So they're going to have to basically just going to have to hang in there at 500. If he's out for a month, they're still going to be around the 8th seed, and then they're going to try to climb up from there. I just don't think in this Western Conference you can be a 6th seed or below and find your way into the finals. I just don't think it's going to happen. There's just too many good teams. And I hate to point this out, but I know they won the title last year, but they were on the ropes in several series. That Memphis series, they were in big trouble. If Ja Morant makes the last second shot in that first game, I mean, that series would have gone on longer. Granted, Ja Morant got injured, and that really helped him out. But until they kind of got their footing halfway through that series, Golden State they were on the ropes, and Boston had them on the ropes too. So this wasn't the kind of thing where everybody acts like this is the old Warriors. This wasn't the kind of thing where they just rolled through everybody. This was a serious challenge. And there's going to be, with Denver and the Clippers being hopefully, we'll see if they're healthy. If they are healthy, and now Phoenix with Durant, it's a totally different landscape they're trying to get through in the Western Conference. So it's not that I don't have faith in them, but I think they've got some issues. So, I mean, as far as just putting the teams in the Western Conference, if you ask me, all right, who are the contenders that I'm worried about? If I'm putting them in order, I'm putting Denver number 1. I'm a Denver guy, but I would put Denver number 1 anyway because Phoenix has still got to figure this out. I got Phoenix number 2, I got the Clippers 3rd, and I got the Warriors 4th.
What about Memphis? You're not putting Memphis.
I probably would have Memphis fit right behind them, 5th, probably right behind the Warriors. But they're probably right there with them. I mean, Memphis is a really good team. So that's the thing. The West is so darn good. I just don't, unless you have all your guns loaded, I don't see how you're going to get through it. And
right.
I think listen, if Phoenix obviously has the highest ceiling, right? If Phoenix gets it all together and everybody's healthy, they're going to be really tough to beat. I just don't know how you guard. I don't know how you guard everybody.
Yeah.
On their team.
Plus,
I think
it
the
makes
Clippers
it easier for Chris Paul because he's not going to have the best defender out there on him, wearing him down. So that's a big deal.
And you got teams that are trying to come out of nowhere, like the Pelicans. Again, another team, if they get healthy, they're really dangerous because they're really talented. So yeah, that's what I would put. I can't believe that the idea that people think this Lakers trade now puts them anywhere near this conversation. I don't think the Lakers have any chance. And if I was a betting man, all my money would be on whoever's playing the Lakers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's going to be fascinating. I'm really looking forward to the second half of the season. I really I think like we used to say, the NBA doesn't start until Christmas Day. I think the NBA doesn't start until the trade deadline. I think this is it's like the perfect transition. It's right when the Super Bowl is. We got the NBA All-Star game right the next weekend after the Super Bowl. So NBA shipping into high gear. As far as our team goes, Miami did not make any moves. It kind of annoyed me when I saw what Brooklyn gave up, or what Phoenix gave up to get Durant. It kind of annoyed me. Why weren't the Miami Heat involved? Granted, I don't think Miami could present as good of a package with Tyler Hero and whatever it is. The Nets weren't really that interested in it last year, but it did kind of surprise me when I saw that. I was kind of like, hey.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like Durant wanted to go to Phoenix, though. So and it seemed like they were the only team that was talking that the Nets were talking to about it. So, it's disappointing, but I mean, like you said, I just don't think the Heat have the pieces. So,
yeah, it's a tough gig. So anyway, before we get out of here, we're going to preview the Super Bowl. Chiefs Eagles. So I mean, I've got before we say who we're going to pick, there's a couple of things, just talking about how I think the game's going to go. I think the game's going to be really competitive. I find it hard to believe one team's going to blow out the other one. Just looking at it from the outside, I mean, Kansas City is better at two positions, quarterback and tight end. Other than that, Philadelphia has the advantage everywhere else. They have a better offensive line, better defensive line, better running backs, better receivers, better secondary, better pass rush. So it's going to be it's a fascinating game from that standpoint. I think the first quarter you're going to be able to figure out a lot. I think how teams look, how they both look in the first quarter, especially how Jalen Hurts looks since he's been banged up for the last 6 weeks or whatever. I think we're going to be able to know a lot about what this game is capable of in the first quarter. My roadmap. So what I did was I kind of gave a bit of a roadmap for both teams. I think for the Chiefs to win, I think the Chiefs need to get the lead and make Jalen Hurts try to beat them throwing the ball. They've got to figure out a way up front to get after it, slow down the running game, and get after Jalen Hurts and make it difficult on them. Make them have to throw the ball, so they have to, play left-handed in a sense, and get the game going. Get the game going in their favor from that way. For the Eagles, I think the Eagles, same thing. The Eagles need to get the lead, but I think the Eagles have got to make a handful of big plays throwing the ball down the field. They've got to get A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith going. They should be able to. They should have an advantage in that area. So they've got to hit some big plays there. I think Philadelphia's got to get at least 28 points to have a chance to win the game. I think Philadelphia's defense can keep them in it pretty much no matter what happens, unless there's a bunch of turnovers or something. I really think, they're going to have a chance to win, but I think they've got to get at least 28 points to make the Chiefs sweat a little bit. Because if you can get it down, limit the Chiefs to about 8 possessions, I think you'll have a shot. So what are your thoughts?
I think really I want to see the first quarter. I want to see how how does the Chiefs offensive line hold up to the Eagles defensive line, because some people have pointed this out, and I don't know how true this really is. They're like, oh well, the competition the Eagles faced, blah 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 blah. So I'm not really worried about the Eagles' defensive line. I don't necessarily know that I would say that. I think it's a fair point because they haven't really played really great quarterbacks really at all this year, which is kind of amazing. But I don't know if I really buy that, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. That's really a big deal, and also how mobile is Mahomes, because he had the injury 3 weeks ago, so he didn't really run around in the AFC Championship game. He did a couple times, but he was limping by the end of the game. So is it going to be like that? Is he going to be a little closer to himself? Look, I'll say this, though. For the people who think, oh, he'll just be mobile and he'll move around enough. Well, if the defensive line's good enough, I don't think that's going to matter that much. If they do a good job keeping him in the pocket and getting pressure on him. So, it didn't, Now, granted, in the last Super Bowl that the Chiefs played, their offensive line was banged up and they just couldn't handle the Bucs at all. And so Mahomes was almost full strength going into that game. So, I don't necessarily know that I'm going to, just think, oh, Mahomes will just avoid all the rush himself, whatever. So I think that's kind of a big one. And then obviously, can Jalen Hurts make some plays throwing the ball? And can the Eagles' offensive line, can they make it so they can run the ball and protect Jalen Hurts? Because if they can kind of do that, but again, like you're saying, I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think Nick Wright, of course he's doing this. He's going, the Chiefs are going to kill him, and I'm just like, I guess I could see a scenario where that happens, but I don't really buy that the Chiefs receivers are all that good.
Yeah, and half of them are injured.
Yeah, Kelsey is, and Peter King was talking about this, that the Chiefs receivers were really banged up in that AFC Championship game. So, I don't, they lost Tyreek Hill, obviously, in the offseason, and so they have not had that. They don't strike quickly, really. They've got to kind of, slowly move the ball down the field. And then some people are talking about, I think the Chiefs need to run the ball. Andy Reid's not going to run the damn ball. What are you kidding? He's been coaching for like 23 years. He's not running the ball. Okay, they might run a little here and there, but I don't really see them, just running it like crazy. I think the Eagles are going to try. I mean, unless they're behind, the Eagles are going to try to run the ball a lot, just like you said, to shorten the game. So I'm going to take the Chiefs, but I would not be surprised at all if the Eagles won. We'll see. Again, I really want to watch the first quarter. I'm taking the Chiefs, but I can see some potential problems. I'll just go with the better quarterback, and the Chiefs' offensive line is really good. So I think that will be enough to get them to get the lead in the fourth quarter and win the game.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I'm going with the Chiefs too. Look, Philadelphia has a better roster. There's no question about that. I think Mahomes will be able to figure something out in the second half to win the game. And I feel like Kansas City needs less to go right for them than Philadelphia does. But like I said, if they come out in that first quarter and Philadelphia is just dominating them up front, then maybe it doesn't even matter.
Maybe it looks like the 49ers Super Bowl. I mean, because that's what happened in that Super Bowl. The Chiefs just were not themselves. They couldn't do what the hell they wanted, and they had Tyreek Hill at that point. So, yeah, that's why I'm a little, I'm not really seeing the Chiefs blowing them out. But again, anything can happen. You can have a couple turnovers or something, and that can change the whole game. But, yeah. Go ahead.
Based on what we've seen in the playoffs, right? I mean, Kansas City struggled against Cincinnati's defense, and we know Philadelphia's defense is better, right? Philadelphia was able to run the ball on San Francisco's defense. We know San Francisco's defense is better than the Chiefs. So it's kind of like if I'm just using the evidence of what I've seen, I think the Eagles are going to be able to move the ball, and especially if you're adding Jalen Hurts into the running game, if he's part of the running game, which he usually is. They're going to present some challenges for the Chiefs defense that they haven't really had to deal with. And,
right.
The Bengals were able to make big plays throwing the ball. They just couldn't block. And the Eagles are not going to have a problem. The Eagles, you would think, are not going to have a problem blocking. Their only issue is going to be is Jalen Hurts going to be able to throw the ball consistently enough to win the game. So, but I'm looking forward to it. It should be pretty awesome. So, all right. So everybody enjoy the game. Enjoy the rest of the NBA season. And we'll be back probably Monday night. We'll see how it goes to give our reaction to the Super Bowl. And then definitely be back next weekend to talk about NBA All-Star and all kinds of other stuff. So, all right, folks, everybody stay safe out there.